Brahmā. It is I, the personality of Godhead, who was existing before the creation, when there was nothing but myself. Nor was there the material nature, the cause of this creation. That which you see now is also I, the personality of Godhead. And after annihilation, what remains will also be I, the personality of Godhead. Please repeat this translation. Brahmā, it is I, the personality of Godhead, who was existing before the creation, when there was nothing but myself. Nor was there the material nature, the cause of this creation. That which you see now is also I, the personality of Godhead. And after annihilation, what remains will also be I, the personality of Godhead. It's a very long purport. We will go through this purport little by little. So I'll read one paragraph. We will discuss that again. After that, I'll speak a little about vaśiṣyeta. Purport. We should note very carefully that the personality of Godhead is addressing Lord Brahmā and specifying with great emphasis himself, pointing out that it is he, the personality of Godhead, who existed before the creation. It is he only who maintains the creation, and it is he only who remains after annihilation of the creation. Brahmā is also a creation of the Supreme Lord. The impersonalist puts forth a theory of oneness in the sense that Brahmā, also being the same principle of I, because he is an emanation from the I, the absolute truth, is identical with the Lord, the principle of I, and that there is thus nothing more than the principle of I as explained in these words. Accepting the argument of the impersonalist, it is to be admitted that the Lord is the creator I, and that the Brahmā is the created I. Therefore, there is a difference between the two I's, namely the predominator I and the predominated I. Therefore, there are still two I's, even accepting the argument of the impersonalist. But we must note carefully that these two I's are accepted in the Vedic literature, the Kathopanishad, in the sense of quality. The Kathopanishad says, Nityo Nityanam Chetanas Chetananam Eko Bahunam Yo Vidhati Karma. Let's start the reading the book at this point. We will discuss something about this. Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnana-dhyana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Nena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnu-padaya Krishna-preshthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti-vedanta Swami-niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Padakadeshakarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaurabhakta Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Lord Vishnu is answering Brahmā. Brahmā has asked 4 questions. What are the 4 questions Brahmā has asked? Anybody remembers? The first question Brahmā asked is, what are the forms of the Lord in matter and in transcendence? Rupa. Form. What are the forms of the Lord in matter and in transcendence? Second question is, how are the different energies of the Lord working? So remember these 4 questions because that will give a lot of clarity as to What is it that Vishnu is trying to answer? He is trying to answer specific questions asked by Brahma. So the answers will make a lot of sense if you know the questions. Is it not? So the first question is, what are the forms of the Lord in matter and in transcendence? Second is, how are the energies of the Lord working? Third is, how does the Lord play with his different energies? You see the interaction of the energies. There is a certain control exercised by somebody or something above and beyond these energies. So, Brahma's question is, how does the Lord play with his energies? And the fourth question of Brahma is, how may Brahma be instructed to discharge the duty and respect to him? How should he do his duty? A certain duty that is given to Brahma, and how should he discharge it? So these four questions will be systematically answered in the 4 verses called the Chatushloki Bhagavatam. According to the Acharyas, the entire Bhagavatam can be summarized in 4 verses. Now, those 4 verses are the verses beginning with this present verse. 2nd canto, 9th chapter, 33rd, 34th, 35th and 36th verses. 4 verses called Chatushloki Bhagavatam. And it is said by the Acharyas that Lord Vishnu spoke the Bhagavatam to Brahma in these 4 verses. The essence of the Bhagavatam was spoken by Vishnu to Brahma in these 4 verses, specifically answering Brahma's 4 questions. So the answer begins with Lord Vishnu telling Brahma that all of me, my transcendental existence, my form, my colors, my qualities, my activities, everything let it be awakened in you by factual realization out of my causeless mercy. That was the 32nd verse. And in the 33rd verse, that realization is being given by the Lord speaking. There is a philosophy of the Bhagavatam. Simply if you hear Bhagavatam, you realize the absolute truth. Especially Bhagavatam presents the absolute truth as the personality of God. So you realize the highest aspect of the absolute truth simply by hearing. Just like Brahma realized, simply by hearing from Vishnu. The important thing is that there is a certain way of hearing, and also the hearer has to select the proper source. So 2 things for realization. One is you hear properly, and second is you hear from the right source. So Brahma had prepared himself to hear by performing paścād. That way Brahma prepared himself. Secondly, Brahma was hearing directly from the personality of God, Vishnu himself. So we should also prepare ourselves to hear the Bhagavatam by undergoing the process of sadhana bhakti. What does sadhana bhakti do? It purifies our consciousness of all the misconceptions we may have. When we hear with one filter. What is that filter? What is the filter that comes between our hearing, what is actually being described in the Bible? False ego. Our false ego is the filter that is actually coming in the way of our proper hearing. False ego is a set of misconceptions that we have about the self, about God, about this world, about anything. So these misconceptions in the form of false ego has to be cleared. So when you practice sadhana bhakti, abhyasa yoga yuktena, then your false ego is cleared. Vidyate hridaya granthi, chidyante sarva samshayaha, chiyante jasya karmani. In the beginning of Bhagavatam, this process is described. The process begins with hearing. Srimad Krishna. And this hearing process, if it is properly applied, it results in purification of the consciousness to the extent that this knot of material existence, ahankara, is cut to pieces. Vidyate hridaya granthi, chidyante sarva samshayaha, then all doubts about who you are, who is God, what is your relationship, what is this world, everything is cleared. Chidyante sarva samshayaha. Chiyante jasya karmani, then the chain of fruitive action is completely terminated. We are caught up in this chain of action and reaction. We have performed some actions in the past, of which we are experiencing reactions. These reactions prompt us to do further actions, and that gives rise to further reactions. So we are caught up in this network of actions and reactions. So to get us out of this network, Bhagavatam says, Srimad Krishna. Hear about Krishna from the Bhagavatam. So the sadhana bhakti process is the preparation for hearing for the sake of realization. And the source, what is the source? The Lord or the Lord's bona fide representative. So we have to select carefully the source from which we hear. So in this case we are hearing from Prabhu, who is coming in parampara from Krishna. So when we hear from Prabhupada, then we can actually realize, factually realize. So here Krishna is explaining to Brahmā, Vishnu is explaining to Brahmā. He is telling one fundamental truth, that it is the personality of Godhead, Vishnu himself, who was existing before the creation, when there was nothing but myself. So before the creation, there was no material world. There were no created beings. Only the Lord existed. The personality of God, Vishnu, he existed. Nor was there the material nature, the cause of this creation. Even material nature was not there. Sad-asat param. Sat, in this case, refers to the effect. Effect is what we see around us, the material world. It's an effect of a cause. Cause is asat. What is that? Material nature. This is the difficulty in understanding this word, that the cause and effect both are material nature itself. So how can one understand that the cause and the effect are the same? Very difficult to understand. Actually, even though the cause of this material creation is material nature, still material nature is not independently the cause for this creation. So that will be explained in detail. Anyway. So here Vishnu is telling sad-asat param. He existed before the creation. He also existed when there was no cause of the creation. Even material nature, which is the cause, was not existing. Sad-asat, param, cause and effect, beyond cause and effect. He exists beyond cause and effect. That which you see now is also I, the personality of Godhead. Now the creation is already come into existence and Vishnu is very much there. If he was existing before the creation, what happens to him during the existence of the creation? He remains. He does not disappear. He does not transform. He does not become affected. He does not change. So he remains even after the creation has taken place. And after annihilation, the whole creation will be destroyed. After that, what remains will also be I, the personality of Godhead. Vishnu only will remain after everything is destroyed. So at the purport, Prabhupada is explaining one point in this first paragraph that we understand, try to understand carefully. That the impersonalists, they say, with respect to this verse, their argument is that Brahma is an emanation, is coming out of Vishnu. Right? Brahma is born from Vishnu at the beginning of creation. So that Brahma is the same principle of I, aham. Here the word used is aham, evāsam, evāgre, paścād, nānyad, sad-asat, param, paścād, vaśiṣyeta, asmi, aham. So this word aham is emphasized, I. Vishnu is speaking and is saying I existed before, I am present now, I will remain after the expansion. So the Mayavadi argument is that the I is the same I, which is the absolute truth, which exists before the creation, which remains during the creation, and which remains after the whole creation is destroyed. Brahma is also that same identical I. The same I. So our acharyas explain, yes, even if we accept the Mayavadi argument, Brahma is also the same I, because an emanation from that original I, original Vishnu. Brahma is emanation. Brahma is coming from Vishnu. So even assuming that the Mayavadi argument that Brahma is an emanation, therefore the same I, we have to note that Brahma is a created I, a created entity, and Vishnu is the creator. So there are two distinct I's here, the creator and the created. So that is explained here as the difference between the two I's is the predominator and the predominated. Brahma is subordinate, Vishnu is the master, Brahma is the subordinate, created, Vishnu is the creator, Vishnu is the controller, Brahma is the controlled. This difference exists and therefore we cannot accept that both are identical in all respects, 100%. No, Brahma and Vishnu are not identical in all respects. So in the Vedas, it is said, in the Kathopanishad, the similarity between the creation and the creator is described as nityo-nityānām. Between Brahma and Vishnu, the similarity is nityo-nityānām. Both are nitya. Both are chetana. Chetanas chetanānām. But the difference is there are two categories of nitya and two categories of chetana. Nitya means eternal, chetana means conscious. two category of eternals and two category of conscious beings. What is the difference? The next line says, Eko bahunam yo vidadhati kama. The one singular eternal conscious being is the maintainer of the many conscious eternal beings. Eko bahunam. Eka, the one, Nitya, Chetana. Distinction is made very clearly, one and many. Singular and plural. Nityo, Nityanam. Chetanas, Chetananam. Eko, Bahunam. Very clear. Singular and plural. So plural are the many living entities and singular is Vishnu. Singular is Vishnu. So Vishnu is the maintainer of all the created beings, the many living entities. So Vishnu is the maintainer, all others are maintained, even though both are eternal and conscious beings. So the difference is clearly brought out in the Kathopanishad, and that difference will be pointed out by Vishnu to Brahmā also in these references. I'll speak a little about Gaur-Kishora Babaji Maharaj. Gaur-Kishora Babaji Maharaj is the guru of Prabhupada's guru. Prabhupada's guru is Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. His guru is Gaur-Kishora Babaji Maharaj. Gaur-Kishora Babaji Maharaj was actually Paramahamsa. Paramahamsa means the devotee situated on the topmost spiritual platform. Paramahamsa is also considered to be the highest perfection of sannyas, renunciation, or the renounced order of God. Now, Gaur-Kishora Babaji Maharaj, it is said in his biography, not much is known about his early years before he formally began devotional service in Vrindavan. It is just said that he was born sometime in 1830 and he got married at an early age, and within a few years after his marriage his wife died, and he was a grain merchant during his grihastha life. And after his wife passed away, he came, left his home somewhere in East Bengal, present-day Bangladesh. He left that place and came to Vrindavan. In Vrindavan, he took instructions and took diksha from one Bhagavad Das Babaji Maharaj, who was a disciple of Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj. So Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj is in our parampara as the guru of Bhakti Vinod Thakur. So that Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj's disciple's disciple was Gaur-Kishora Babaji. And he displayed, we chant this pranam mantra during Pushpanjali, Namo Gaura-Kishoraya Sakshat Vairagya Murtaye. He displayed renunciation of the highest order. He is personification of renunciation. Vairagya Murti. That means, if you want to know what is Vairagya, then you can see it in the personality of Gaur-Kishora. He is totally disinterested in any sense gratification. He used to live a very, very simple life. It is said that for maintaining his body, he would beg some grains from the Dhamvasis. And he would simply offer it by holding it in his hand. Very, very simple. process of offering. And for covering this cloth and for cooking these grains, he would use some dry wood pieces lying here and there in the forest or on the road. And he would take pots which were discarded, earthen pots which were discarded after being used for some function or ceremony in the holy place. Clean it up with river water and cook those little grains and take them. For covering his body, he would go to the cremation place, burning hut, and the cloth that was used to cover the dead body, when they bring the dead body for burning, they cover it with white cloth. And before burning, they remove the white cloth and discard it, they throw it away. So that cloth he would take and cover himself. So basically, for maintaining his body necessities, he would do it without any difficulty, without any elaborate arrangements. Very, very, very simple way. He was always absorbed in Hari Bhajana. He is called Bhajananandi. Bhajananandi means somebody who can completely absorb themselves 24 hours a day in meditation on the Supreme Lord Krishna through performing bhajana, through performing kirtan or japa, or through hearing about the glories, or through singing the glories of the Lord. In this way, always absorbed in that. Now Gaur-Kishora Babaji Maharaj was illiterate. He did not know to read and write. That means he did not undergo formal education. But he would always carry with him two books written by Narottam Das Thakur, Prema Bhakti Chandrika and Prarthana. These are two books written by Narottam Das Thakur. It's a collection of songs written by Narottam Das Thakur. Now in these two books, the entire philosophy of Krishna consciousness is very nicely explained. Narottam Das Thakur has written in simple Bengali. He has written a lot of songs. And in these songs, he explains the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, which is there in Sanskrit, in so many Vedas, Upanishads, Bhgavatam, Bhagavad Gita. All that philosophy he has explained in very simple Bengali language through his songs. So, Gaur-Kishora Babaji Maharaj would always be carrying with him these two books. Apart from these two books, he had on his body one kanti mala made of tulsi and another japamala made of tulsi beads, and the cloth he was using to wrap his body. That's all he was carrying with him. So he was very, very renounced. Even though he was not literate, still all the conclusions of the Shastras of the Krishna consciousness philosophy was always illuminated in his heart. When somebody would approach him and ask some philosophical doubt, he would give the answer with such clarity. All the conclusions he knew. So he used to guide those who used to approach him, asking for philosophical clarity on the Gaudiya Vaishnava, on the Vaishnava Siddhanta. And sometimes when some materialistic people would try to get his blessings for some material benefit, he would not so much be interested in giving such benediction for material advancement. So he would go away from clean places and he would sit next to a toilet, a latrine. Latrine means specifically where somebody passes to. It could be very smelly, it could be dirty, it could be bad. So he'd sit next to that place and chant so that nobody would disturb him. So he did not so much like people coming to him for some material benefit. And he never liked to accept service from other devotees. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, when he wanted to take Diksha, his father, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he approached his father and said, I want Diksha. So his father directed him to Gaur-Kishoras Babaji Maharaj. He said, go to Gaur-Kishoras Babaji Maharaj and take Diksha. So accordingly, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur came to Gaur-Kishoras Babaji Maharaj and requested, please give me Diksha. So Gaur-Kishoras Babaji Maharaj, in the beginning, he would not respond to this request. So when repeatedly Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur approached Gaur-Kishoras Babaji Maharaj, then one day Gaur-Kishoras Babaji Maharaj said, I will ask my Lord, and depending on his reply, I shall tell you whether I can initiate you or not. So after telling this, again Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was waiting for a reply. So one day he asked, what did your Lord say? So then Gaur-Kishoras Babaji Maharaj said that he would not be interested in giving Diksha. He will not accept service from anybody. So if he has to give Diksha, he has to accept service from his disciple. So since he did not want to accept service from anybody, he wanted to be only engaged in serving, not in accepting service. Therefore, he did not want to give Diksha. So when Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur heard this reply, he became very, very unhappy. When he told that my life is worthless, not worth maintaining, if I cannot get shelter at your lotus feet and serve you, I will better quit this body. I will rather die than live without getting Diksha, shelter, mercy. So when Gaur-Kishoras Babaji Maharaj heard this, he felt compassion and he gave Diksha. So he had only one disciple, that is Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and nobody else. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur describes that after some years in Vrindavan, Gaur-Kishoras Babaji Maharaj came to Navadvip. In Navadvip also, he travelled to all the places where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu performed the pastimes. And he would reside under different trees, realizing the non-difference between Navadvip Dham and Vrindavan Dham. Vrindavan Dham is the place where Krishna performed pastimes. And a replica of Vrindavan Dham is Navadvip Dham, where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu performed the pastimes. So he visited different places in Navadvip Dham, Gaur-Kishoras Babaji Maharaj, and he would stay under different trees, realizing the non-difference between Navadvip and Vrindavan. He would also come to hear the discourses on Bhgavatam, which was being given by Bhaktivinoda Thakur in a place called Swananda Sukhada Kunja. Bhaktivinoda Thakur built this place in one sacred spot in Navadvip Dham, and he would regularly give discourses on Bhgavatam, and many great devotees would come and hear. Among the many great devotees who come and hear Bhaktivinoda Thakur's discourses on Bhagavatam, one of them was Gaur Kishoda Bhagavad Maharaj. You'd sit and hear the discourses of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And he would also not be so much careful about regularly taking prasadam or regularly taking rest. Most of the time you will be awake, you will be either chanting or singing, or you will be studying. These two books that you would always carry, Prarthana and Prema, the collection of songs of this time. So people used to wonder that he actually is illiterate. So how does he read? How does he sing these songs? How does he know the philosophy? It is because of his devotional service, which was pure, which was of the highest quality, that, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Tesham Satatayuktana Bhajatam Pritipurvakam Dadami Buddhiyogam Tam Yenamam Upayandite Tesham Evānu Kampartham aham Ajnanajam Tamah Nashayami Atmabhavasto Jnanadīpam. So this is particularly applicable for Gaur Kishoda Bhagavad. Krishna, who is seated as Paramatma in the heart of the devotee, he enlightens the devotee from within. If the devotee is engaged in devotional service to the Lord, Satata Yuktana Bhajatam Pritipurvakam, he is constantly engaged with love and devotion in serving the Lord. Then the Lord enlightens the devotee from within. There is no need for the devotee to study externally anything. So Gaur Kishoda Bhagavad Maharaj was enlightened from within by the Lord. So that was his position actually. He was fully enlightened and he was fully renounced. So it is said in the Bhagavatam that these two factors are very important for self-realization. What is that? Jnana and Vairagya. Jnana is enlightenment and Vairagya is renunciation. Both of them were seen in the personality of Gaur Kishoda Bhagavad Maharaj to the highest degree. He was fully enlightened and he was fully renounced. And therefore, many great saintly persons actually took shelter of Gaur Kishoda Bhagavad Maharaj by actually inquiring from him, by getting clarification on so many doubts. Also, Gaur Kishoda Bhagavad Maharaj could easily recognize an imposter devotee. Sometimes people pose as if they are great devotees, though within their heart they are not purified of material contamination. They pose externally as if they are renounced, but actually in their heart they have so much desire for enjoying material. So when such imposters would approach Gaur Kishoda Bhagavad Maharaj, he would immediately expose them. So it was well known in the holy dham that any impostor will get exposed if he goes to Gaur Kishoda Bhagavad. So nobody could cheat him, nobody could display false renunciation in front of Gaur Kishoda Bhagavad. So he was very advanced, Paramahamsa. But he led a very simple life. He was renunciation personified. And today is the disappearance day anniversary of His Divine Grace, Gaur Kishoda Bhagavad. So we pray to him that by his mercy we may develop renunciation and we may get enlightenment in Krishna consciousness by his mercy. So he is Acharyas like him are very, very merciful to those who sincerely seek their blessing, seek their blessing. So such important days we observe, especially remembering the great qualities. So that pranam mantra, first line I explained, Namo Gaura Kishoraya Sakshat Vairagya. The next two lines are Vipralamba Rasam Bhode. He was situated, Bhagavad was situated in service, in the mood of separation from Krishna. It's called Vipralamba Rasam. Krishna is served by those who are advanced devotees, who have developed their relationship with Krishna. They serve Krishna in two ways. One is in association with Krishna, they serve Krishna. And other one is in separation from Krishna, they serve Krishna. Just like Krishna when he appeared in Vrindavan. So when he, as long as he was in Vrindavan, the Brajavasi was serving him in association. And when he left Vrindavan and went to Mathura and Dwaraka, he was away from Vrindavan. All the Brajavasis were serving Krishna in separation from Krishna. So these are two ways of serving the Lord. So Bhakti-Kishora Babaji Maharaj was always serving Krishna in separation from him. Vipralambarasa. So there is a certain mellow taste to be experienced by the devotee in such service, Vipralambasena. So he is the expert Acharya who served Krishna in Vipralamba Rasa. So, Vipralamba Rasa Bole Padam Pujayate Namaha. To lotus feet of such a exalted Paramahamsa devotee, I offer my respectful obeisances. Let's start with Srimad Bhagavatam.